Microphone working? Okay. I think we're live. And is it 1? It's 1 o'clock? Welcome to Art Lessons. I'm so glad you're here with me today. I hope some of you had a chance to watch the studio tour. We walked around and talked about different things in the studio and supplies we had and unusual things that we used here. And it was a lot of fun. So today we're just going to be doing a drawing lesson. And if you were on the studio tour, I will be continuing drawing on Wednesdays. The time might flex a little bit because I'll have classes going on at 1 o'clock when we get into June. But I will continue a free live drawing lesson on Wednesdays as much as I can throughout the summer. So that way, you know, all you need is a pencil and paper, and you don't have to worry about supplies. You can join me, and it's going to be different things. Like today, we're just going to talk about the eye, which means we're going to talk a lot about shading and that sort of thing. So I want you to have your papers and your pencils or charcoal if you have it. And then I want to see if you can, I didn't put this on, just put paper, but see if you have a thin sheet of paper handy. One of the things in drawing is you use a blending tool when you're doing more realistic drawing, something you might use to shade. You might see something called a stump. I talk about that a lot. Or a word I don't use as much is a tortillon. And a tortillon will have a very, very pointy end, and a stump will have pointed ends on both sides. They're basically the same thing, but just a little bit different. But it's tightly rolled, helps you blend. So I didn't necessarily say have scissors and an extra sheet of paper, but if you can grab some scissors real fast, we're going to make a real quick makeshift tortillon or stump, whichever one. It's just going to be a little makeshift, and we're going to have that to use today so you can get that concept. So I have a piece of printer paper, and I am just going to cut it in half. You do not need this. You can end up using other things. You can use your finger. You can use Q-tip if you have it. You can kind of tightly take a little piece of extra scratch paper, but all I did was cut a piece of printer paper. You can see how flimsy it is, in half. And then I want to angle the end. So, and I apologize, I did not say have scissors handy. In my mind, I was going to tear it, but that was quick. So you see what I did? I now have a printer paper that I cut in half, and then I angled about half like that. You see where we are? So then we are going to roll, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start at the long end, and I'm just going to roll this as tightly as I can. I'm going to put it down on the table. I'm just going to roll it as tightly as I can. Mine is kind of flat, but I will round that out to make that work. And you're rolling it as tightly as you can. Now, I usually don't make my own, but this will suffice for today. So I'll show you in the middle. See how I'm rolling it? I'm just rolling it as tightly as I can. I'm going to roll that whole sheet of paper, and I started with the long end and just rolling it tightly. Now, why are we doing this? Well, you're going to see. It's a blending tool. So I'm going to keep rolling that towards y'all, and maybe I think you can see that. Okay. Let me get all the way to the end, and I can just kind of hold it. And then I can take that end and kind of smush it in to make somewhat of a point. So it's going to get a little bit like that when you're done. Okay? So if you didn't do this, don't worry about it, but I'll show you where we'll use it, and you'll kind of see how we'll work this in. So let's get to drawing the eye. So most of the time when we're doing something really simple, we're going to put in that football shape. But the eye is asymmetrical. It's not really exactly the same. So I'm going to try and draw my lines dark enough you can see them, but light enough that I can kind of shade them around. So I'm going to do this, and I'm going to draw kind of the upper half as though we are kind of coming up, like making a rounded hill or a smushy rainbow right there, a little rainbow. We're going to do that, and that's going to give us the top of the eye. Now, you tend to have more curvature, just on average, on the top than you do on the bottom. So we're going to put the little tear duct right there. You see? I almost could finish this off and start making it look like a little hedgehog if we added, or a turtle right there, if we added a little face. So we've got this arch right here, and we've got this, and then we're going to come back around like that. Now that's a little light, so I hope you can see that at home. I'm not going as dark as I usually do, but I want you to see how we've come up a little bit higher on the top. We're worried a little bit more realism here. Now, the best way to draw the eye is to look at an eye. And you know I always say draw what you see, but we're going to draw a generic eye today to give you that. My suggestion to you is, after you've done some of the exercises in this lesson, to take a picture of your eye, or have somebody else in your family take a picture of your eye, switch it into black and white mode, and then use that for your reference, that picture when you actually do it. And just do and other eye, because your eyes aren't. So we've got it coming up right here, a little bit higher. We've got our tear duct right here, and we've got our bottom right here. So now we're going to come in, and we're just going to gently put where the lid is up above. So I'm just kind of lightly putting in a line. And so we're putting the outside, and then we're going to go ahead and put the center. We're going to put our iris in the middle. So I'm a little big on my iris, but that's okay. I might want this to come a little bit lower here. So I've got my iris in right here. Notice the iris is typically cut off at the top. Talia, do we have a question?
We're getting reports that we're frozen from a couple people. It says live video interrupted.
Okay. Can you see it on ours? Hang on, we're checking a technical glitch.
You're still rolling on the phone, but our computer is.
Is the computer glitching?
I think someone says you're back now.
Okay, am I back now? So, are we back? Are we good? I was doing a Zoom meeting earlier, and it kept glitching all day, and other people were having problems. So, it looks like it is live. We're going to take just a second. Give us a minute. We think our video is good. How are y'all doing? Can you see? Give me a thumbs up if you can. So, okay. Oh, the glories of technology. Okay, so let's get back to where we were. We did our top line right here. We did our little tear duct. We did our bottom line. We've put in our eyelid, and then we've put in where our iris is right here. Remember, it gets cut off on the top, so you want to make sure you have that. You also want to make sure when you're drawing these lines, you're doing a little lighter. Like now that I look at it, I might want to make my iris a little bit smaller, or I might want to come out a little bit more, and I might adjust that as I go along. Is it freezing again, T?
No, I think you're good.
Okay, so you should have all this here, and then we're going to put the pupil in, and we're going to kind of just give it that center look right there. So we've got all this going on. We have everything there. I'm going to go ahead and put a highlight right here. Now I'm putting this circle really lightly. I hope you can see that. And I'm going to come back in And I'm going to erase so I remember where that highlight is. And I'm going to give myself another little bit of highlight, probably about right there. Okay? So I'm marking my little highlights in. And we're going to go ahead, and what we're going to do is we're going to shade the iris. We don't need to worry about the pupil, and we don't need to worry about the highlights. But how do I shade? I'm going to shade very lightly. So I'm going to come in, and it should be very, very light. I want to make sure we're getting this very light. And I'm coming all along. You can use the side of your pencil if you want to. Very light. So, okay. And I'm going to keep coloring. It makes like the nicest noise. It's just a paper on pencil. If I was in a classroom, everyone would be busy just making this. But see how light? I'm just making sure this is the most, this part and your highlights are what are really going to give that transparent touch. So once you get it kind of lightly shaded in, and that should be pretty light, we're going to take our homemade stump right here, and we're going to use this to start blending it. So you're going to press kind of hard, and you're going to see usually when you have a stump, it's really, really hard. So this is going to be only something that we would use in a pickle or on an eye. But it's going to blend, and you can see how I have some of that graphite. I can add, or actually I'm using charcoal, so I'm going to add a little more charcoal in there. T, we have any questions? Everyone doing okay? Okay. Yes, it is a day. You know what we found? What? I'm not sure. Not sure. So very lightly, I'm shading in that whole iris right here. So I just want to get this light coat so that we're filling that in as we get that. And what this does is this provides a background. Now, a lot of times you'll hear me talk about how I don't use an eraser. Well, I actually use an eraser a lot in drawing. But what I don't want is a student that's new to drawing or to shading to be erasing their lines all the time, because there are a lot of lines that until you really get set, you actually need. And it's helpful for me to know where you started, because that helps me see your thought process. It's your map to how you thought about your drawing. So when I say don't use an eraser, it's more don't draw one line and then erase it, or feel that you have to erase everything.
You shade the top of the iris.
Yes, I'm shading. So the iris goes below that lid. So you're not going to shade into it, but you're going to shade everything around. I'm not worrying about the pupil. If you shade the pupil, it's fine. We're going to black it in a minute. But don't shade your highlights wherever you put your highlights. And you can put highlights in different places. Some people like to put circles. I did a circle in a line just because. But we're going to shade. I like to start with the center and then move out. So, you're just going to keep it light. We're going to darken it up. But let's go ahead and fill in the pupil. And remember, when you're using a pencil, you don't want to press super hard. It's better to layer it up in layers. One, it can kind of mess with your paper a little bit. You can end up tearing your paper. And number two, it makes it kind of shiny, and you don't get the same effect. So if you just layer that up, you want that pupil to be pretty dark. So I'm going to Now remember, I'm leaving my highlights, so I'm going to shade that pupil. I might make it a little bit bigger. It's kind of hard sometimes when you're off to the side drawing. I want to be straight on. And when I'm drawing so big, it's... So, okay. We're starting to see our pupil in there, and I hope yours is looking darker at home. You can layer that in. So, I think we're having problems with our lights too. Is that light out, T? So, our lights are going, we're glitching. It's a Wednesday. Who knows? So, we've got you just layer that up. And now we're going to work on shading. So now you can kind of start to see the eye. You see the lid. You see where we came up. We're a little bit asymmetrical. You have a point over here. You've got your tear duct there. You've got your spot underneath. And you can kind of see the iris because we've shaded it in. Now, depending on what your iris looks like, it may be darker. But you always want to see if you can share some kind of difference. Like Tate's eyes are the most beautiful color. They're the darkest brown. But if you look at them, Tate's on the computer today. Keaton could come. So Talia's on the phone and Tate's on the computer. If I could get him to come over here and show off your beautiful eyes, I would. Will you do it? He doesn't want to. He's embarrassed. But his eyes are so dark that it's very hard to see the pupil. So, he's going to show them. Will you show him? Show him how beautiful his eyes are. Oh, you're so handsome. So, but when we do his, this would still be lighter because you want to make sure you have some kind of difference. Tate's eye shape would be different too, like your eye shape would be different than this one. So remember the idea of taking a picture and looking at that reference. But this will give you all the shading tips. So we've got all this. What we're going to do is we're going to start darkening up around the edge. So I'm going to come along and I am going to take that edge and I am coming along with my charcoal. I'm using charcoal so you can see it. And I'm darkening up this edge of the iris. Usually, if you have a lighter color iris, you're always going to have a little bit of dark. Now, notice I'm not just making a ring. I'm kind of coming in a little bit. So I come in and I darken this up and I'm shading it as we go. So it's darker right along that edge. And then I shade it in a little bit right there. And so, let's see if I come along here. And we're going to go along the top, same thing, underneath the lid. I'm going to make it a little bit wider there because I'm going to come down a little bit more right along there. Okay, so you start to see that. So we're starting to see that eye come in. Now, at any time, you can take our homemade kind of stump. It's not working the best way, but it will give you that idea of using that. So we're gonna, can you see how it smears that? Kind of rounds that out. I know it doesn't show details great on Facebook Live. It tends to be a lower resolution. See how we start to phase that in. Okay, you starting to see an eye. I'm going to work a little bit on this. So you can really see where I'm picking it up on that edge. I kind of use it the way when I'm shading with a pencil. I hold it like this and I use this finger to put pressure on it. So when I'm coloring, it's doing this against the edge. Okay. So we basically have that going now. And we're going to start coming in with our details. With our homemade stump. Yeah. You can use a Q-tip, yes. So right here, I have a Q-tip in my drawing. So you can use a Q-tip. I'll do this so you can see it. But what works even better than a Q-tip is a makeup sponge. That works great. So, but you can see how it picks it up. The Q-tip will start to give you little streaks, which on an iris is great, but on other things might be not what you're looking for. But makeup sponge applicators are fantastic. So we're going to go ahead and put, now you want to make sure this is when you would have a very sharp pencil. Sometimes if I'm doing this in graphite, I would make sure my pencil is very sharp. Lots of people like to use mechanical pencils because you can, then your lead is always at a precision. I don't like to use mechanical pencils, but if you do, this is a perfect time for mechanical pencils. So we're going to start doing lines, and you can barely see them from there because I'm making them very light. I'll try and darken them up, but I'm coming from the outside in. Okay. We're going to go around. Now you want to make sure you're skipping your highlights. And I'm going to go around, and I'm going to do this a couple times. And when I start up here, I have more pressure. It's like I pull and drag. So I'm doing this. So right up here, I push and I pull. So it's heavier at the top and lighter to the bottom. So I'm getting that outside. So we start. But it really starts to give you that idea. Shade in. I've lost a little bit of my shading when I stump. That idea of that rounded feel of the eye. I'm going to darken it a little bit more up top. I'm going to keep going around, but you really start to feel that. And then I'm going to darken this up a little bit more because I'm going to get that shadow of that lid. Always moving towards the center for that iris. It's like the outside's the darker part. So I'm moving in always towards the center. If, every once in a while, if you want to pull it out, you can do it from the middle, but you don't want to start right in the middle because that will be where your pencil touches down will be the darkest part, because that's when you touch your pencil to the paper, that's when you put the most pressure. When you pull it off, that's when you get the thinner line, when you get that lighter pressure. So we spend the most time on the iris because this is really what helps to make the eye look the most realistic. So you start getting that. I'm going to come, let me see, I like to stand back, but you're getting that idea. Now, here's when you might take your eraser. You can take your kneaded eraser if you have one, and if you had a kneaded eraser, you would put it in a point. A kneaded eraser is spelled knead, like knead dough, K-N-E-A-D, and it's literally comes in like a little gray square, and lots of people go, I don't even know what that is. But it's where you're able to erase charcoal. I'll do this so you get this black, and then you can move it around. You can also shape it to form a point. So kind of like your stump or your tortillon, you can use this to actually erase away. So you can use it to do the same thing to emphasize those lines. I want to get that hard edge off of my highlight there. So it can end up picking up lines like that. So you get that idea. Let's see if it will let me erase that away. Okay, so you can tell I'm using charcoal because I'm getting little charcoal fingerprints all over. But that should help you get enough on your iris and your pupil that you have that idea. So we start with this because this is your darkest point, really, and you want to make sure you're going to have that. And then this gives you your most realism. We're probably going to come back and address it, but we need its surroundings to fill that in. So we know there's a little bit of shadow on the whites. So I'm going to come along and I'm going to darken this line in right here. I'm going to come along and darken that top lid because your light source usually comes from above. So we know that's going to come from here, and then your lid is going to shade that part of your eye. So you can use your Q-tip, stump, whatever you have, your finger, and let's shade that in a little bit. Okay. We do the eyelashes very last. Very, very last. So Talia said people think it's really cool, but they're very worried about the eyelashes. We're close to it, but don't worry. We do the eyelashes at the very, very end. So we're trying to make sure, because the eye is round, I may darken that up, and this kind of comes in, you've got a little bit of your tear duct there. We want to make sure we're shading, kind of like our apple, this part to come around like that, so that you get that look. Okay? Okay, so you should have kind of some of that. You usually shade pretty much most of the whites of the eyes. Remember, we can come back in with our eraser as a drawing tool, not a changing our composition, but as a drawing tool. And so we're kind of shading this area. And kind of start seeing our eye getting rounder. So now let's shade in our lid up here and start getting ready for our eyelashes. So you're going to have a line, so we're going to darken this line. And this is where your eyelid is. So usually it comes over. We're going to darken this line, and then we're going to mostly shade above it. So I'm going to use this. I'm going to shade up into what would be underneath your eyebrow. I'm going to move that in there. Okay. And then I'm going to bring a little bit, remember our dark line? I'm going to bring a little bit of that up into the lid. And if I don't have enough, I can come back. Let me get over here. I'm going to pull that up as though that's the underside of the lid right there. So what I'm doing is I'm pulling my dark lines and I'm bringing them together. So, we have a question, T? You're doing okay? So I'm going to darken that up so that I can bring it back up into my, there we go. I'm going to use my finger because this is getting pretty big here. So I'm going to shade up a little bit, kind of like we shaded into our iris. And then I'm going to shade a little bit down here. Kind of remember that we've got skin. And then you can use to start to blend that. I might switch my charcoal real fast. So start to blend that. So I am just lightly shading this. I want there to be different from the whites of the eyes. So, and I'm using my fingers because I'm using charcoal. So what happens is when we draw the face, everyone gets real excited because you're trying to find everything that goes on the map, which is really cool. And then it's as though you get the whole map and then you have to focus on every little detail. So you start focusing on the eyes, then you focus on the nose, then you focus on the lips. And you can practice drawing this all day long. I actually love to draw eyes. It's kind of my doodle. I draw face, I draw eyes, nose, mouth. But that's why I draw as my doodle a lot, just because it's very calming and it's kind of fun and you can look around and look at people's eyes and check that and see. So I'm going to shade just a little bit above while I've got the side of my charcoal here. And we're starting to get the idea that that eye is actually belonging to somebody. So if you find out that this isn't quite dark enough, you can come back in and darken, different parts of the iris and really get some of that line. This is when I kind of start piddling a little bit and start fussing with it and seeing what I need or what I don't need. So, and smoothing things out. So that helps you see. I always look like this when I'm done. So you get all that. Now up here, you would have your eyebrow somewhere around here, and your eyebrow would come along. So something like that. Now you can barely see my eyebrow. So I'm just going to put something in about that shape. And I'm going to... I'm using Vine charcoal right now. It's one of my favorites. If you aren't familiar with charcoal, charcoal comes in several different forms. It comes in a pencil. It comes, and we've talked about your numbers, what they mean on your pencils. It comes in vine and willow, which will be wispy little sticks. And they never get quite as dark as, and then compressed charcoal, which is usually what I draw with a lot, or the permanent markers for you, because you can see it up on the board. Now here's the difference. This is vine charcoal. See how it just smushes away, versus here's compressed charcoal. See the difference? It's darker. See how much darker it is? So I'm just going to use lines to represent the hair, and I just am literally stroking it up like that. Now, I know you're worried about the eyelashes, but don't worry. I'm not going to leave the eyelashes off. But we have to talk about the eyelashes, because the eyelashes can be a problem. People get very worried about their eyelashes, and it's a little bit like when people draw trees. So I'm just going to kind of take my eraser and fuss that in. Kind of get that where y'all can see it.
How do you make an eye look masculine?
Okay, well, the best thing is to look at the eye. The eyes, masculine or feminine, are pretty much the same. There isn't a lot of difference. There is more difference in the eyes in ethnicity. So I would be, and age. Age will have much difference. But gender, male, female, there isn't as much different as an eye. If you've ever had someone say, you have your mother's eyes or you have your father's eyes, that's because you probably do. And they probably look very similar. The other features on the face will be different depending on if you're male or female, but the eyes pretty much look the same. Eyes will look different as a baby because you'll be wider and brighter. And as you age and your skin is a little bit looser and looks much wiser, it will, like mine looks much wiser. I'm going with that. But you will see it might come down a little bit. You would add wrinkles, that type of thing. And then ethnicity would affect it in the sense that you might have a double lid, which means we have this lid and that one, or you would have a single lid. So, which means you wouldn't have as much this line here. It would be pretty smooth. So so it doesn't really affect more boys and girls. Now, what people think of is if women spend more time emphasizing their eyes with makeup or putting mascara on, you might see more of their eyelashes. But I have seen, unfortunately, probably the most beautiful eyelashes I see are always on boys. That's just the way it goes. But so we've got this idea, but that was a great question. So we've got this idea that we've got that. So let me just talk about the eyelashes. This is what I see a lot. Somebody wants to do this, and they want to put the eyelashes like this. Okay? Your eyelashes actually don't go like that. Your eyelashes, if I look from the side, do this. They come out and up. And notice, thick, where I put my pencil down, and coming up. They might even come out like that. But if they look like this, they would come like this from your skin and then come straight up. So that's not actually what happens. So how do you represent this? Well, you kind of do basically what I'm doing. You take it right here. So it usually starts just a little bit above, and you pull it out. And then as I go, I give it still that swirl, but I kind of double layer them, and don't worry.
Do you prefer charcoal or pencil when drawing your eyes?
It depends on size. To draw this scale with pencil would take way too long for us. So, and anything, if I'm drawing large, I like to draw with charcoal. If I'm drawing a small portrait, I would rather draw with graphite or pencil, because your charcoal ends up getting like this all over, and you end up making a lot of marks when you're trying to do details. So you notice how it's this fleck like this, however it goes. So it's down and up, almost like a check mark. And you want it to crisscross. You want it to, I kind of lighten as I go. Now I'm going to come back. So, and the funny thing is you might actually see the reflection of those lashes down in there. So you can do that. And they kind of trickle off as you go if we're actually looking. So I'm going to add some more off to the side. But this is where you really kind of start to get that line in. And you can emphasize this more. You can make them longer if for some reason you are blessed with the world's most fabulous eyelashes. You can pull them out. They tend to be longer in this area. Oh, are they a little hard to see? Okay. Okay. So you see how I lighten them up as I come up here? I keep getting lighter, but there are eyelashes as they go. And they don't start right at the bottom. They start just a little bit up. Can y'all see that? Okay. I'm going to let this lid come over a little bit. but that pretty much starts giving you, and then this is when I start coming back and I start fussing and, you know, taking my pencil in and going, oh, I need a little highlight there, or I need to pull that highlight out right there. So this is when we could start to play, and you could play all day long and really have a good time. You could decide you wanted to add a highlight in by erasing in. You can always, oh, you want me to put eyelashes on the bottom? Okay, we'll put eyelashes on the bottom.
Do they always curve the same direction? Or
No, if you look, I'll put them over here. I have some eyelashes doing this. You see what happens there? Your lashes tend to actually come straight out, but because of the arc of the eye, you see the ones on the end the most, and there's the most there. So you end up, the eyelashes, I mean, you should have a few that even come over here, right here. And then down here, you start a little bit away, and these are going to be smaller. And it's the same motion, just and crisscross them, you know, that's more realistic. And I tend to not do a lot of emphasis on the bottom. You can even come back in with the eraser and your shading and kind of emphasize the fact that there are lashes. I tend to not do too much on the bottom because they're usually harder to see on most people. A tad bit darker if I can. Okay, let me darken this up and maybe y'all can see that. Hang on just a sec.
can you color the eye?
Well, I only brought charcoal to the table today, so, but if you want to color the eye at home,
Will that smear or affect your graphite?
so no, if you come in with colored pencil, it should be just fine. You can come in with really anything if you want to add color. But if you were going to color the eye, you probably wouldn't put this much shading in just in your graphite. You would actually get your outline, your contour in, and your details, and then you come in and do your shading with color. So, you know, if this is a blue eye, you might get into purples up here where it's darker and, you know, actually have some black along the outline. But I think now, how is everyone doing on their eyes? Pretty good? I bet I'm going to see some fabulous eyes. This is where you really can start to play and see what happens and, you know, really find details that you want to find. I could just fuss with this forever if I'm really honest with you because this is so much fun.
What about pastels?
So pastels are fantastic. You can definitely come in with pastels. Again, same thing if you were coming in with colored pencil, pastels, you would want to do less of your graphite and more of the actual shading using your pastels. Pastels especially because and colored pencils because they layer, and as you layer you get a lot of depth. So if you have your graphite underneath, it doesn't stop, but it might, you might get a better, more beautiful effect using more of the pastels. So I think we've got it. I think we've got an eye. And I've got some charcoaly hands. That's my favorite. The best thing to do though is to always draw from life. So my recommendation to you is to get someone to take a picture of your eye or see if you can selfie just your eye and then switch it into black and white mode. And the reason I say black and white mode is you can see all the shades and you can really start to see the value of your blacks and your grays when you move into the black and white. That way your eye isn't looking for color, it's looking for definition. And then draw what you see. So like, for instance, I have a little freckle in my eye. I have a freckle in my eye like right here. Well, I would know to add that freckle in my eye because of what I wanted to see there. So that's my recommendation. That way you can really kind of study yourself and see what you find. See, I told you I can just sit here and fuss with this. But all in all, it's a lot of fun. And once you start thinking about all these drawing concepts, every time you draw something, it helps you draw something else. So I hope you've enjoyed this. Tomorrow we'll have a lesson posted on Greek face painting, and you'll need a sheet of cardboard. Don't prime the cardboard. We're using the cardboard as the red painting itself. So we're going to keep that brown color of the cardboard and just paint in black to get that image. And so I think that'll do it. Have fun. Thanks so much for joining me today and for drawing the eye. And I will see y'all tomorrow. Art is man's nature, nature is God's art. Bye, guys.